So I'm trained as a speech and language pathologist. Okay, 20 years ago, when I was going to school for speech pathology, every speech pathology program was called communication disorders. Okay, so I have a master's in communication disorders. Just the way that the titles are worded gives you a lot of insight into the framework that I was operating in. So I was a speech language pathologist looking for pathology. Um, Things that, a pathology is something that's like not going the way it should be going. And then I was getting a degree in communication disorders. So people with disordered communication that need to be ordered, right? The opposite of disordered. In my first, I was in two master's programs. The first one, I had a little bit of a nervous breakdown, both in terms of I really struggled with that perspective and philosophy. I didn't feel like my values aligned with fixing or ordering um, these people's communication and children's communication in particular that was different to me, but different than the social norms, but not less to me, and not in need of fixing. And then I also was confronting my queerness in a way that kind of like blew my life up as well. But I was really clear I didn't want to finish that degree. I felt like it just wasn't me. And then a few years later, struggling to figure out a way to have money to pay for things. I was working as a paraprofessional, so like an assistant teacher to kids with disabilities. And I was struggling financially. I was working like three jobs after school as well. And the principal was like, "You have half of a degree in speech pathology. The world is desperate for speech pathologists. Like, please go back and finish your degree." So I went back, and the only way I was going to be able to do it was with a scholarship. And one of the professors told me there was an autism specific scholarship. I had spent the last several years um, working with kids with autism. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. So I did that. I went ahead and, applied. I got given this government grant. Hold on one second. Oh, right. So, as I was saying, I got this uh, scholarship, and it was the US Department of Education Autism Trainees Grant. And we were to be given, it was like a small group of um people in education across different fields of education who were going to be given autism specific curriculum to train up like a cohort of people that would be in the public schools that would be able to support autistic kids. So I started in this curriculum, and very quickly I was like, I don't think there's anything wrong with these kids. It seems like they have a different form of communicating and a different way of expressing their needs. And I remember so clearly the first assignment we had was to do sort of like a exploration on a facet of autism. I got connected with this group of autistic adults in the UK who were working on autism rights, and who used primarily computer. It was a little pre like all the texting and FaceTiming and all that. So they were using typing to each other in online forums to create social connection, but also to create social change. And I was really delighted because these people were like totally speaking my language. And I presented it to my professor, and my professor was like, yeah, no, that's not the direction we're going. And I spent the remaining 2 years of the program sort of butting heads with the professor and the faculty professors and the other faculty around my perspective that I wasn't trying to fix or change anyone, that I was trying to if anything, support folks who were wanting to communicate more, but felt like they needed tools and strategies to be able to communicate. But if there was something that was working for someone, I wasn't trying to change it just because it wasn't the expected thing. And this created a lot of conflict for me in my program. I almost quit several times. At the end of the program, I even wrote a letter to like the dean about how I felt that, now I would say how I didn't have that language, 20 years ago, but now I would say how they were not being inclusive, both of myself as a like queer gender nonconforming person. It was very much a like everyone was like a nice lady who like wore pearls and cardigans and was like very precise and taught all the kids how to be perfect, and I was not doing that. And there was a lot of pushback from um, professors and then clinical supervisors who told me that I was unprofessional because I was not, sort of looking the way. I was too hippie. I was told I was too hippie. I was told that my like hair wasn't professional because I had like really short, maybe more man's haircut. Um, a lot of things came up, and there was people who pushed me to like wear makeup and be more professional was the word they always used, but now I understand they wanted me to be more femme. And it was pretty awful. My health deteriorated. I was like really just it was a rough time, and the 10, 14 years I think it ended up being uh the 14 years that I worked in public schools after graduating were more of the same. A lot of me pushing back against supervisors and principals, administrators, when parents were coming in and asking for me to make their kids more conforming, and I was like, yeah, that's not where I'm coming from. And I then I studied Spanish growing up, and so I started working a lot with the bilingual population and English language learners, and I would push back there too. This is not a disability. This is not the role of a speech language pathologist. This is the role of the English language learners um, teachers. And, it's a specific methodology to work with someone who has a different way of learning, but it's a different methodology to work with someone who's learning a second language. And I got a lot of pushback there because, as you know, the public, or as you may not know, the public schools get money for each student that has an IEP or an individualized education plan. And so, I'm working in one of the more liberal places in the country, and even here, like 90% of the kids who were learning English were also receiving special education services without a disability diagnosis. And speech language pathologists were giving them language disability diagnoses that were not accurate if they were assessed through a bilingual lens. So, all of that to say, it has been, in my experience, a really tough field to be in as a person who doesn't see disability as a disorder or a deficiency or something to be fixed. And I am really delighted to say that this is the American Speech and Hearing Association's like monthly magazine. And this month has on the front the neurodivergent experience of clinicians who live it. And it has a whole article in the words of speech pathologists who identify as neurodivergent or as autistic. And it's not edited. They very specifically like name that in the beginning, that it's in their words. And it is exploring this idea of the medical versus the social model of disability. And I'm just so thrilled to see that this is happening in my field. in my lifetime. And my training as a speech pathologist is what qualifies me to be able to be an SSP and RRP provider. And so my work still is dependent on my association with this um, career identity that I have struggled so much with. And to see this being highlighted front page of our monthly magazine really is so exciting to me and helps me to feel more confident in maintaining this role that affords me to do the work that I do now really believe in and that I feel so privileged to be able to do. But I just wanted to share this with you all because I think it is really helpful to consider medical versus social model of disability, especially as many of us are exploring either self diagnosis or a medical diagnosis of ADHD, autism, any of the other neurodivergent presentations. So, for just breaking it down, they've got a nice little chart, and I'm just going to share that with you. For the medical model, a disability is an individual or medical phenomenon that results from impairments in body structures or functions, deficiency or abnormality. Okay. And the intervention for the medical model for a disability is to fix the disability to the greatest extent possible, thereby normalizing the presentation. And the outcome of the intervention or the goal is to have normalized function and have a functioning member of existing society. So basically, it's the if you're a square, excuse me, if you're a square peg, if you're a square peg and society has a round hole, the medical model seeks to round out those edges of that square peg so that the square peg can fit into the round hole, not changing anything with the shape of the hole. Okay, so a social model of disability, the definition of disability is a social construct that is imposed on top of impairments by society. So it's a difference. So it's basically saying, like, one, I have, let's say, two chopsticks. One can like roll up, the other one, you just need to use your finger to get it out. Just say, two chopsticks, but different ways of using it. If society said only the chopsticks that can roll up are healthy chopsticks, and the chopsticks that you use your finger for are broken, then we need to fix these chopsticks because they are different. And by different, we mean damaged or broken, needing to be fixed. Okay. So that's the medical model. And then in the social model, we just say, oh, this chopstick, you do this to use it, and this chopstick, you use this to use it. So that's just how you use them differently. In a social model, the target of intervention is social or political change in an effort to decrease environmental barriers and increase levels of understanding. So, in that sense, we're taking that square peg, we're saying, okay, the round hole is very hard for the square peg to fit into. So, we might create a square peg next to it. We might broaden out the hole or create a square hole next to the round one, or we might widen out the round hole so that either a square or a round peg could fit into it, for example. The goal of the intervention is self advocacy, changes in environment and understanding, and social inclusion. So, again, we're creating ways for this square peg to not have to change itself, for there to be space for the square peg, or to be able to say, like, yeah, you can use both chopsticks, you just use them differently. So this is so exciting to me, really. I know this type of thing is not usually what I share about, but I just really wanted to share about it because there is a part of me that still, lives and works as under this umbrella of a speech and language pathologist. And I'd love to come up with another word to call myself, a speech and language clinician, perhaps, but that still has that like clinical medical aspect in it. So maybe a speech and language advocate, a speech and language consultant. I don't know. But I'm just really thrilled to see this within my Speech and Hearing Association, and really grateful for the clarity around using those two differentiating those two models and being specific that, I am no longer and really was never operating under a medical model of disability. I am operating off of a social model of disability, recognizing that understanding my own and others' differences supports me in being able to create a more inclusive environment and to be able to understand, in the example of the chapsticks, like perhaps I thought that the way to have a chapstick was to roll it up, but I may find that I prefer and enjoy putting on the chapstick with the finger. So it opens up possibilities too, in the sense that, for my own self, I may have had or was given and trained into a lot of ideas around acceptable social behavior. And now that I'm understanding my own autism and my own neurodivergence, I can replace some of those things with, like, oh, you know, healthy adults go out and hang out with other people all the time in the evening. And now I can say, a healthy me doesn't enjoy spending time out in the world in the evenings. I prefer to be at home, and to just say, like, it's just like the two different chapsticks. So, anyways, I just was so excited about this and wanted to share it. And I'm sending you all so much love.